The night before our gallery opening, our housekeeper grabbed my arm in the hallway and said, "Don't go upstairs, go to the laundry room, stand by the vent, and listen." I almost laughed. My name is Jolene. I'm 31 years old. I own, or I thought I owned, a residential design firm called Morrow Interiors based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'd spent 14 months planning this gallery event. 14 months of sourcing reclaimed wood from Virginia barns and hand-selecting Italian stone samples, and arguing with contractors who thought a woman with a tape measure was decoration. The opening was tomorrow. 63 confirmed guests. A write-up already drafted for Charlotte Home and Design magazine. And here was Miriam, our housekeeper of 9 years, standing in the hallway at 10 p.m. with her shoes still on and her eyes full of something I'd never seen in her before. Fear, not for herself, for me. "I don't eavesdrop, Miriam," I told her. "That's not who I am." She didn't let go of my arm. "Miss Jolene," she said quietly, "please, you need to hear what they're saying, before tomorrow." Something about the way she said "before tomorrow" made my stomach tighten. Not dramatically, not like a movie. More like when you step on a stair and it shifts under your weight, and for half a second your brain registers that the foundation is wrong. I went to the laundry room. Our house is a 1920s colonial revival that I renovated myself. I know every imperfection in the plaster. I know that the vent between the laundry room and the upstairs study carries sound like a church confessional. I'd discovered that by accident years ago, when I heard my husband Trent singing off-key to the radio while doing taxes. It was charming then. It wasn't charming now. I pressed my back against the dryer and listened. 2 voices. Trent and his mother Corinne. "After tomorrow night," Corinne said, "it's done. The transfer goes through Monday."
Transfer of what?
Trent's voice was lower, careful. "She won't even notice for a few weeks. She'll be busy with the press and the clients. By the time she looks at the operating agreement, it'll already be filed." Corinne laughed. That soft, controlled laugh she'd perfected over decades of garden club meetings and church luncheons. A laugh that said, "I've already won, and I'm being gracious about it." "She rebuilt that company from a folding table in a garage," Corinne said. "And she still doesn't understand how LLCs work." My hands were shaking, not from sadness, from recognition. 'Cause I did understand how LLCs work. I understood them intimately. I'd filed every amendment myself. I'd structured the operating agreement with a small business attorney when we were still working out of that garage. And 6 months ago, when Trent offered to modernize the paperwork through his mother's accountant, a favor, he said, since Corinne knew someone who'd do it for free, I'd signed a stack of documents at the kitchen table between bites of takeout pad thai. He'd pointed to the signature lines. Right here, and here. Standard stuff, tax optimization. I signed because I trusted my husband. Let me back up. I started Morrow Interiors 8 years ago with $11,000 I'd saved from freelancings while working nights at a furniture showroom in South End. I named it Morrow because it meant tomorrow, the future I was building one client at a time. My first project was a 3-bedroom ranch in Dilworth. The homeowner cried when she saw her kitchen. That was the moment I knew. Over 8 years, I grew the firm to 7 figures in annual revenue. 3 full-time designers, a warehouse, vendor relationships with suppliers across 4 states. I was the one who answered calls at midnight when a shipment got delayed. I was the one who drove to Hickory at 5 a.m. to personally inspect a batch of custom cabinetry that wasn't meeting spec. I was the one who kept the lights on during COVID by pivoting to virtual consultations before anyone in Charlotte was doing it. Trent joined the company 3 years ago. He'd been working in commercial real estate, and when his firm downsized, I offered him the operations role. Because that's what wives do. We hold doors open for the people we love and pretend it doesn't change the power dynamic. He was competent, organized, good with spreadsheets. But let me be clear, the clients came because of me. The reputation was mine, the design eye was mine. And the vendor relationships, built over years of showing up, being honest, paying on time, remembering people's kids' names, those were mine too. Corinne never liked that. Corinne is the kind of Southern woman who smiles while she's cutting you. She'd grown up in a family where the men ran businesses and the women ran households, and the idea that her son worked for his wife was a splinter she could never stop picking at. She'd say things at Thanksgiving like, "Trent, you must be so patient, working for family is hard." Or, "Jolene, honey, don't you think Trent deserves a real title? He does so much behind the scenes. As if the scenes belonged to him. Now I stood in my laundry room, hands pressed against cold metal, listening to those two people plan my removal. She'll keep the title, Trent said, on paper, but the operating agreement gives managing authority to whoever holds the majority membership interest. That's me now. Once the gallery event is over and the new clients sign, the valuation jumps, and the buyout clause kicks in at the lower rate. Before revaluation, he'd thought about this, carefully, patiently, while sleeping beside me. I can file the amended articles Tuesday, Corinne added. Douglas already prepared them. Douglas, her accountant, the one who did us that favor. Jolene's name stays on the marketing, Trent continued, for continuity. We don't want clients spooked, but decision-making flows through me. She can focus on design. I'll handle the business side. The business side, my business. The one I built with my own money, my own hands, my own sleepless nights. And the best part, Corinne said, voice almost musical, she'll think it was her idea. We'll frame it as giving her more creative freedom, less stress. She's been tired. Everyone can see it. Tired. That's what they called it when a woman works 80-hour weeks and still cooks dinner because no one else will. I stayed in that laundry room until they went to bed. Then I walked barefoot across the hardwood floor I had personally refinished 3 summers ago, sat down at the kitchen island and opened my laptop. It was 11:47 p.m. I didn't cry. I want to be honest about that. Something inside me had shifted from soft to structural, like a beam locking into place. I wasn't broken. I was being engineered. The first thing I did was pull up every document I'd signed in the past year, every amendment, every addendum, every casually presented piece of paper that Trent had slid across the counter with that easy smile. 3 documents stood out. The first was a revised operating agreement that moved majority membership interest from me, 70 pellers to a joint structure, 50-50. Standard, Trent had said, makes taxes cleaner. The second was an amendment allowing membership transfers without unanimous consent. Just a formality, he'd said, in case we ever bring on investors. The third was a management succession clause. In the event of transition, operational authority defaults to the member with the longest continuous involvement in day-to-day management. That would be Trent. If they could argue I'd stepped back from operations, which the creative freedom reframing would conveniently establish. 3 documents, 3 dinner conversations, 3 signatures I gave away like they were nothing. But here's what they missed. When I structured Morrow Interiors in that garage 8 years ago, I did something unusual. My attorney at the time, a sharp woman fresh out of Wake Forest law who charged me a fraction of her worth, advised me to build what she called a founder's fingerprint into the operating agreement. Specific clauses tying critical vendor contracts, lease agreements, and professional liability insurance to the founding member's authorization. Not just signature. Authorization. Meaning ongoing, revocable, written confirmation that the founding member approves the continuation of each vendor relationship. It was designed as protection against hostile partnership disputes. I'd agreed because it cost nothing, and I figured I'd never need it. I needed it now. I spent until 3 a.m. reading every line, cross-referencing, mapping dependencies, and what I found was beautiful in the worst way. Trent's amended documents gave him membership control, but the original founder clauses, buried deep in the appendix, never amended because no one thought to look, still required my written authorization for every active vendor contract, every single one. The cabinet suppliers, the stone importers, the upholstery workshop, the lighting vendor in Asheville, the flooring distributor in Raleigh, 23 vendor relationships, all tied to my authorization, all renewable annually. Renewal date, next Monday, 5 days after the gallery opening. They were going to announce Trent's new leadership role at the gallery. I was sure of it now. Big smiles. New era. Growing the brand. And then Monday, they'd file the amendments, lock me out of decision-making, and restructure the valuation before I could challenge it. But without my vendor authorizations, the company would have no supply chain, no product pipeline, no ability to fulfill the contracts those 63 gallery guests were about to sign. They stole the frame. I still held the canvas. The gallery opening was exquisite. I made sure of it. I wore a deep green dress I'd been saving. I shook every hand. I smiled for every photo. I walked clients through the showcase rooms I'd designed. The coastal modern living room with the custom driftwood shelving. The moody library with the hand-painted wallpaper from a woman in Savannah. The kitchen that made a retired surgeon cry because it reminded her of her grandmother's house in the Blue Ridge Mountains. At 8:15 p.m., Trent tapped his wine glass. He stood at the front of the gallery, Corinne beside him in pearls, and gave a speech about evolution, about how Morrow Interiors was entering a new chapter, about how he was proud to step into a larger leadership role to help the company scale. He called me up, put his arm around me. Jolene built something incredible, he said, and now we're going to take it further. Together. The room applauded. Corinne dabbed her eyes, and I smiled so wide my cheeks ached because the woman standing next to him wasn't his wife anymore. She was his auditor, and she was already 3 moves ahead. After the event, I helped stack chairs. I thanked the caterers by name, Maria and Joaquin, who I'd used for every event since 2019. I drove home with Trent in comfortable silence. He reached over and squeezed my hand. Tonight was perfect, he said. I squeezed back. Yes, I said, it was. At 1 a.m., after he fell asleep, I sat in the guest bathroom with the door locked and my laptop balanced on the edge of the tub. I drafted 4 emails. I didn't send them yet, but I wrote them. Carefully, clinically. The way you write when you know every word will eventually be read by someone in a conference room. Saturday morning, I called Miriam. I want to thank you, I said, silence on the line. Then, quietly, I almost didn't tell you. But my mother worked for a woman once. Same thing happened. No one warned her, she lost everything. I paused. I won't forget this, I told her, and I meant it. Sunday I visited my attorney, not the original one. She'd moved to DC years ago. This was a new one, a man named Philip, methodical and unromantic about the law. I showed him everything. The original operating agreement, the amended documents, the founder authorization clauses, the vendor renewal dates. He read for 45 minutes without speaking. Then he looked up. They made a significant error, he said. Which part? They amended the membership structure but didn't touch the appendix. Your authorization clauses are still active. And because the amendments reference the original agreement as the governing document for all non-amended sections, these clauses have full legal force. He paused. If you revoke authorization, every active vendor contract enters a suspension period, 30 days. During which no new orders can be placed and no existing commitments can be fulfilled without founding member consent. I nodded. What about the gallery clients? I asked. The ones who signed letters of intent this weekend. He tilted his head. Those LOIs reference Morrow Interiors' current vendor capabilities. If those capabilities are suspended, the LOIs have a material change clause. Clients can walk. Clients can walk. With the new valuation, with the press coverage, with everything they'd been counting on. I went home and cooked dinner, roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans from the farmer's market. Trent ate 2 helpings and talked about how many follow-up calls he needed to make Monday morning. You're amazing, he said, mouthful. I don't tell you that enough. Monday morning. I woke up at 5:30, made coffee, sat at the kitchen island one more time. At 7 a.m., I sent the first email to our primary cabinet supplier in Hickory. Subject line, Vendor Authorization Status, Morrow Interiors. Dear Alan, I am writing to formally notify you that, per Appendix C, Section 4 of the Morrow Interiors LLC Operating Agreement, I am initiating a review of all active vendor authorizations. Please hold all pending orders until further written confirmation is received. Thank you for your continued partnership. At 7:04, I sent the second email, Stone Importer, same language. At 7:07, the third, Upholstery Workshop. At 7:09, the fourth, Lighting Vendor. At 7:12, I poured more coffee. At 7:38, Alan from Hickory replied, Jolene, received. We've placed a hold per your request. Please advise on timeline. At 7:45, the Stone Importer replied, we weren't aware of any leadership transition. Per our agreement, we require your sign-off before continuing. Please confirm status. At 7:52, Trent's phone rang. He answered it in the bedroom. I could hear his voice change, that particular shift from confident to confused that happens when the ground moves. He came downstairs. Did you email Alan? He asked. His face was strange. Not angry yet, just recalibrating. I sipped my coffee. I'm reviewing our vendor authorizations, I said calmly. Standard protocol before any structural transition, you understand. That word transition landed exactly where I intended. What are you talking about? He said. I set my mug down. Trent, I said evenly, I know about the amendments. I know about the membership restructure. I know about Corinne's accountant. I know about the management succession clause you built to push me out of operational authority. His face went white, not movie white, real white. The kind where you can see someone's brain scrambling to reconstruct a plan that just collapsed. Who told you? He whispered. I ignored the question. Because Miriam's name would never leave my mouth. Not then, not ever. By 8:30, 4 more vendors had responded, all with the same message, holding until confirmation. At 9:15, one of the gallery clients called. Hi Jolene, we received a notice about a vendor review. Should we be concerned? At 9:22, another client emailed, we've heard there may be internal restructuring at Morrow. Can you clarify before we move forward? At 9:40, Corinne called. I let it go to voicemail. Jolene, this is Corinne. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop this immediately. You are going to destroy everything. I saved the voicemail. At 10, Trent sat across from me at the kitchen island. The same island where he'd slid documents toward me with that easy grin. The same island where I'd signed away pieces of myself between bites of pad thai. You're going to ruin us, he said. I looked at him for a long time. You are going to erase me, I said, from my own company, the one I built before I ever met you. Silence. I told you it was for tax purposes, he said, and I believed you, I replied. That's not your defense, that's your crime, he flinched. By Wednesday, the situation was exactly where I'd mapped it on that Sunday night. 7 vendors formally suspended operations pending authorization. 3 gallery clients withdrew their letters of intent, citing material uncertainty. The Charlotte Home & Designs magazine piece was quietly postponed, and the amended operating agreement that Corinne's accountant had prepared couldn't be filed, because Philip, my attorney, had already sent a formal objection to the registered agent, flagging procedural irregularities in the amendment process. I hadn't accused anyone of anything. I had simply exercised my contractual rights and requested proper review. That's the thing about betrayal in business. You don't need to scream, you just need to read the fine print better than the people who tried to bury you in it. Thursday night, Corinne showed up at my door. Not Trent, Corinne, alone. She was wearing her church pearls, which told me she'd come to perform. Jolene, she said, standing on my porch like a woman who expected to be invited in. We need to talk about this like adults. I leaned against the doorframe. I agree, I said. Have your attorney call mine. You're tearing this family apart, she said. I smiled. Not a cruel smile, a tired one. I didn't restructure the membership behind my own back, Corinne. That was your son, and your accountant, and you. Her jaw tightened. Everything we did was to protect the business, she said. From whom? I asked. She didn't answer, because the answer was me. And saying it out loud would have made the cruelty undeniable. Friday morning, Trent tried a different approach. He came to me at 6 a.m. before the coffee was even ready. He looked like he hadn't slept. There were circles under his eyes, and his voice had that particular softness that men use when they realize force won't work. Joe, he said. He hadn't called me that in months. Can we just talk? Just us? No attorneys? I looked at him. Really looked. At the man I'd shared a bed with for 7 years. The man I'd handed a job to when his career collapsed. The man who'd held my hand during my miscarriage 3 years ago and said, we'll get through this together. Did you ever see me as your partner? I asked. Or was I always the infrastructure? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. And then he said, I thought we were building something together. You were, I said. On top of me. The settlement meeting happened the following Tuesday, Philip's office. Glass conference table. Neutral territory. Trent, Corinne, their attorney, a man named Bradford from a firm on South Tryon Street who kept adjusting his cufflinks, Philip and me. They came expecting to negotiate, to haggle over percentages and save the structure they'd built on my signature. I slid a single folder across the table. I'm not here to reclaim the company, I said. Confusion. Visible, almost physical confusion. I'm here to exit. Inside the folder, a buyout proposal. Fair market valuation based on pre-gallery revenue, not the inflated post-event projections they'd been banking on. Clean separation of intellectual property. Transfer of the Morrow Interiors name and brand identity to me. Because I'd registered the trademark in my name before Trent ever joined the company. And one more thing. A formal compliance inquiry I'd filed the previous week with the North Carolina Secretary of State's office. Not a lawsuit, not an accusation. A request for review of the amendment filing process, specifically whether the amendments met the procedural requirements outlined in the original operating agreement, which required unanimous written consent from all members for any structural changes. Consent I'd technically given, but under what a court might consider material misrepresentation. I wasn't suing them. I was giving the state a reason to look. If the amendments stand, I continued, they were filed with my authentic consent, and everything proceeds normally. If they don't, if the review finds procedural issues, the entire restructuring unwinds, and every contract signed under the amended agreement becomes legally questionable. Bradford stopped adjusting his cufflinks. Trent stared at the folder. Corinne's hand trembled slightly on the table. You would burn this down, Trent said quietly. I met his eyes. No, I said. I'm giving you the chance to let me leave with what's mine, before someone else decides what's yours. Silence stretched across that glass table like a crack. Then Philip spoke gently. My client would like a response by Friday. By Thursday afternoon, the buyout was signed. Funds transferred. I walked away with the brand name, the client list, the vendor relationships, which I immediately reinstated with full authorization and a clean financial exit at fair valuation. I also gave Miriam a bonus, not a small one, and a letter. I won't say what it said because some things are private, but I will tell you, she cried. And I cried, and we stood in my kitchen holding each other like two women who understood what it costs to be loyal in a world that rewards convenience. I filed for divorce the following Monday. Trent texted once. Was any of it real? I didn't respond for 3 days. Then I wrote back. The company was. The marriage should have been. He never replied. Corinne sent a letter through her attorney requesting that I not discuss the situation publicly. I had Philip respond with a single line. My client has no interest in discussing your family. She's too busy building her own. Morrow Interiors relaunched 6 weeks later solo. New office space in a converted mill in Noda. Smaller, leaner, mine. The first client who walked through the door was the retired surgeon from the gallery, the one who cried about her grandmother's kitchen. I heard what happened, she said. I don't need the details. I just need to know you're still designing. I am, I told her. Good, she said, because I want you to build me a home, not just a kitchen, the whole thing. It was the largest contract I'd ever signed. Some mornings I still wake up at 5:30 out of habit. I make coffee. I sit at my new kitchen island, smaller, simpler, just for me, and I think about that night in the laundry room. My back against the dryer. The sound of 2 people I trusted dismantling my future through a heating vent. They thought I was downstairs folding towels. They thought I was the kind of woman who folds and never unfolds. They forgot who built the house. And now, I don't fold for anyone. I design. I build. I sign my own name on my own documents. And every single morning before the coffee cools, I remind myself of the only clause that matters. The one no one can amend, no one can transfer, and no one can sign away without my explicit, irrevocable, fully informed consent. My worth.